a proclamation was issued by the Governor, George Grey, for the confiscation of land under the New Zealand Settlements Act 1863, on the grounds that the native tribes in that area have been engaged in rebellion against Her Majesty's authority. The area was to be called the Bay of Plenty. Remaining Māori were left with the difficult inland hills, gorges and valleys, and a minimal amount of usable land. Surveyors divided the best parts of the whenua into 1 acre blocks, and the land of Whakatōhea was handed out to militiamen for bringing in the natives in rebellion against the Crown. The rest of the land was sold off to settlers and middle-class citizens who purchased as many blocks as they could to secure plots for themselves and family members. Some of these families still remain in the area today. The Crown allowed the Mokomoko whanau a tiny slice of their own land to live on, at Ōpōtiki. Whakatōhea protested vigorously about the loss of their land, not just through further military engagements, but in the courts. The first hearing for the Compensations Court for Ōpōtiki claims was held on the 7th of March to the 8th of April 1867. 170 claims were heard, but only 70 were settled. There are records from the Land Court of Te Warana, the eldest son of Mokomoko, trying to reclaim the land back from the Crown in the early 1900s. Since the efforts of Te Warana, each generation after him has been involved in seeking justice and compensation for what happened to Mokomoko and their people, including his great-grandson Tuiringa Mokomoko, known as Mani. Tuiringa Mani Mokomoko was the eldest son of Henare and Emma Mokomoko. He was born in Ōpōtiki, 1928.
Tēnā koutou e pāna ki te kaupapa a Mokomoko. Hori ngā mahara ki te hunga o tauhea ki te pō. Te hunga nā rā tau I paka ore tēnei kaupapa. Ko Tuiringa tērā. O nā pāpātanga, o nā rapunga, ngā kōrero, nā nei paka ore tēnei kaupapa e pāna kia Mokomoko. Ai mate mai ko te kaupapa, ko te wākana kaupapa.
Mani Mokomoko was many things, many things. A sergeant in the army. He was the first army instructor for the Outward Bound, New Zealand Outward Bound. He represented the army component. He was an 8th Dan black belt in karate, I think. He was a teacher. He was a man of whakapapa. But to me, he was simply my uncle, a beautiful man that would have time for you if you asked the right questions. A very knowledgeable man. He just had so much knowledge. He knew about everything and anything. His whakapapa, his knowledge of whakapapa was amazing. He would always want to know if he was introduced to somebody or if any of the whānau introduced him to our friends or our partners. He always wanted to know what their last name was. And you could guarantee he could always connect that person to where they were from, or he would know their whakapapa or elements of it. He was amazing. So my journey on this kaupapa, I guess I first started understanding or hearing about Ōpōtiki, not so much about the execution, but Ōpōtiki when I was probably about 16. Uncle Mani would come to Mum and Dad's house and my job was to sit there colouring in maps. And, oh, what's this, Uncle Mani? And he'd start talking to me about the Ōpōtiki, the confiscation line. And so that was my first introduction to the kaupapa of Mokomoko's wrongful execution. And I guess I've been on this kaupapa ever since then.
To try right the wrongs of the past, the Mokomoko whanau were determined to see their tipuna brought back to his ancestral land. It was a lengthy process, as there were no official records to convince the Ministry of Justice that there were remains in the prison grounds to be exhumed. Many Mokomoko and whanau members united and sought a team of Māori experts to exhume the chief from Mount Eden prison. Monita Delamere and Tohunga from Taranaki, skilled in the old ways of exhuming bodies and bones, led a rōpū from Waiawa and Karakia to uplift the chief and others who had been executed and denied a proper burial over 100 years ago. A Māori minister by the name of Nehe Jews was working inside the prison at the time and was called to help take the chief home.
I was appointed in 1985 as the prison chaplain for Mount Eden Prison. I was the first Māori ever to be appointed there. Way back in 1966, I became ordained in Ōpōtiki, and the Mokomoko whanau were part and parcel of our congregation, of our ministry. And when I heard the story of what happened to him in prison, in his arrest and his Anglican church, I couldn't believe that 20 years later I was going to get involved in taking him home.
Koe rape I tohu ai e ngā kuia, e ngā karauga o tērā wā o te whānau ko mōnita hei tohu. Ka rau mōhio. Nā runga tonu I te tana mōhio, he rangatira ia, tana mōhio ki ngā karakia, ki ngā whakahaere. I te mea, ko te hau tū pāpaku, he tauhau ki taku mōhio, kia tātou katoa nera. O kare noa e kia kite I te hahu. Well, I was 23. Koera taku tino tata kia Mokomoko tipuna. Te rā I muri atu, I hui a te Whakatōhea ki te whare o Monita I Ford Street. Ka hui a te Whakatōhea I reira ka karakia. Ka karakia te karaua. Ko ngā kaumātua katoa I runga I ngā motuka rihi a te kāwanatanga. Ko te ria ki pēr tētai o nā taraiwa, ne? I te rāwā. Ko mātenga tētai o nā taraiwa.
The 19th of October, just before midnight, we assembled outside Mount Eden prison. A large gathering of people there. A lot of them were there just to see what was going on. Due to the space, the family decided not to let everybody in, because there were well over 100 people waiting outside to come into the prison grounds to take part. So we had to sort of draft the people to come in. They were mainly the Pakekis, the elders from Whakatōhea, the elders from Taranaki, from Waikato, from Whakatāne.
Te wainganui pō, ka karakia, ka wehe ia mātātua, me o mātou pēke katoa, ko karawhiu te marangai, kua uira te rangi. Tino, karawhiu te marangai. Ka haere atu mātou wainganui pō, ka taiki I mautini, ka kuhu mātou māmuri, mā te ara rerewa, the railway tracks, ka kuhu mātou māmuri.
I would say there were roughly 30, 40 people were allowed in. We were led by our Ringatu minister, Monita Delamere. His karakia, te arahi ia mātou, o tino ātāhua, te whakarongo, te mea nui, te wairua o no karakia I taua pō. The spiritual presence that evening kept us together. Oh, there was so much doubt because they couldn't understand the kaupapa Māori. They couldn't understand the walking stick jumping up and down. They couldn't understand the sticks, the 10 sticks, and one of them falling over during the karakia, and the tohunga identifying where his tipuna was. Those concepts were so foreign. We only read about these things in books and papers and stories, but to actually see them happening, it was unbelievable. I had difficulty in interpreting those concepts to the Justice Department, explaining those concepts back to the church. All that stuff nehe, they say to me, is mumbo jumbo. I cried. I felt so hurt to hear people calling my Māori people that. Oh, that wairua was pretty clear the moment Monita started his karakia outside the prison. In total darkness, I led them through to the markers, and all could hear the karakia from behind.
Ko te tūtanga ke ka mea ke kaireira ke tana tipuna I te mea rātou mahi tinihanga. Nā Pākehā, ākoa e mea nā kaikona, akuni ko te kaikora rāno. Nā te mahitanga te kraua I ana niu, ka tūtonu ka mea,
And when we arrived where the headstones, where the markers were, we formed a circle. E tohu tērā. Even the birds understand the wairua.
Kāre te mai wharehere ho mai he wāhi takototanga mā mātou kāre he wai I te mea he tapu. Ka pēnei noho nei I te mea te karawhiu te maranga, ka pēnei noho nei ka mate wai koea. Pēnei te kuria.
That wairua was embracing all the way through. Ngā karakia ringatu, ngā wahimene, ngā waiata, was so rich. So when they started to dig 2 feet, 3 feet, and then Monita could feel him pulling everybody, holding to everybody. And we were all focusing down in our karakia, in our spiritual way. And then a voice calls out, "Kai kone." We all looked, caught one another in the eyes. We all could, o tīmata te tangi. Not a sad cry, but a relief cry that we found the tipuna.
Ka tai atu ki a Mokomoko, ka tai atu ki aia, ana ko te wāhi ki a māu. Ka hauhu ake I aia. I te mea te kōrero I rongo mātou, ia anko mēni kāre tana māhunga I kona. O tana māhunga I roto I te whare taonga, koe rana kōrero I mea mātou. Engari te hahutanga ake ko te koa, he upoko tōna. He upoko tōna. Ko te pātai mai a anko mēni te putatanga atu. He upoko tōna, ka mea te he upoko tōna.
This is where he konei taku tipuna a Mokomoko. So the Mokomoko whanau and to dig. 2 feet, that was all. And they found him.
Nā mātou toko ono pea, toko whā, toko ono, maybe 4, I think. Nā mātou I hiki ake. That's probably why they left us in there, we were tough fellas. Nā mātou I hiki ake te kohatu. I te mea kāre he traki hana, kāre he crane I roto. Nā mātou I tango mai I tana tinana. Ka wai hoatu I kona. Ko ngā puehu o ngā iwi, nā mātou katoa I kari ake, nā konga ko ngā mā pēnei I te carpet nei, nā mātou I kari ake I te hāwara, ka mea tiki roto I ia kāwhena. Ka āta kari ake, ka āta mea tiki roto I te kāwhena. O ia tūpāpaku, ke kore ai e waihu atu. Ko mātou tonu te arahi a mātou. I te mea ko nā kaumātua kai waho ke. Kāre mātou I mōhio me pēra engari I roto I a mātou 23 hours e mea ana. No, take the lot. Take the lot e hoama.
That wairua is, so real. I can even still feel it today. I can still see it in my wairua, my spiritual eyes and my spiritual ears, my spiritual tangi, in that half light, you see them. Just slowly, no rushing, slowly picking up. We only went inside to pick 5 tipuna up. We had 5 caskets for the 5 tipuna. We picked up the 5 headstones and we started digging the other maka, and we found bodies were under there as well. And while we were digging one of the graves, we struck this huge boulder. Then we thought, oh, maybe there's no more underneath. But when we managed to roll it to one side, we found a tipuna directly underneath the boulder. And you should have heard the whanau in their mamai. How could people do this? Put this boulder on top of the tipuna.
E noho koromeke ana, ko tana upoko I kona pia I te mea na, I te mea. Rata o rata upoko katoa I ngā waiwai. I te mea I tārona ne, ka whati te kaki.
So we managed to roll it right out, and we found some more underneath the other markers. So we found 11 in total. And out of the 11 that we picked up, there was only one. The fingernails were still in contact, the face, the teeth, and the lid of the casket was still whole, still firm. Apart from that one, the rest were, I would say, in sugar bags. Mokomoko was the first one to lead the other chiefs out. And then coming through into the main prison itself, many inmates were still inside, and they were all reaching out just to touch the coffins as we walked past, just to say that's their hooray, haere. And when they saw all the caskets, all the tipunas there, they just gathered around and took over. All they wanted to do was to awhi them, to lift them, and do their haka. And what a moving haka it was.
I kite, I rongo. Oe no, iti no mata ka te toi. I kite, I rongo. Wā, I kite ake ngā kāpena, o tutuki te kaupapa.
The mass of people there, the whai kōreros, and then it wasn't until that evening in the early hours in the morning that we had our karakias to take him up to the burial. In total darkness, we carried the tipuna. All you could hear was people walking in front of you. You could hear the karakias in front of you. Yes. And how the old people managed to walk up that hill in total darkness is beyond me. But just as we got up to the top, the floodlights came on. And what an awesome sight that was, to see the preparations the whanau had made, the final resting place for their tipuna. And they used the cranes to place them into the final resting place. And again, the karakias led by Monita. Very moving. And when you got the iwi kāinga as well at home, oh, it was, yes, very, very moving. Over the years, it keeps coming to the surface. Just the wairua of the story itself keeps bubbling within me. People, eyebrows raised when they hear that I was involved with the Mokomoko, and people wanting to know what actually happened. And every time I share that story, the wairua comes back to the surface. It's so real within me. A story that I know it doesn't belong to me. This story belongs to the Mokomoko whanau, for them to tell the story of their tipuna. I'm about the only one left who actually knows the story of what actually happened and who is actually taking part in it from the word go. And I feel so proud to be part of it. So grateful. Really makes me stand tall, because of Mokomoko.
E haere ane te nehu e aero te te pō. Kore rarau taku pāia e ai tanu atu I roti te ata pō. A ki mai ko papatua nuku teira. O te pāia teira. I ahu mai koe I roto kare te rā e whiti ana e tō ana. O te pō teira ai roto koe I te kōhanga. Ia mātau I rungi te taumata kōreo ka rongo ake hau I tētahi reo. Kai raru akera I te ata pō. Kōreo roto o mōnita e a tēra. Ke tu au e pūkeko, o te tangi a te pūkeko tēra. E a koe mōhi oe, ke tu au I pānau mai au I konei. Mōhi o ki ngā tangi, e pāna ki ngā ngārara, e pāna ki ngā manu, e mōhi ona ki ngā tangi. O tahi noho te kōrero a te pūkeko, nau mai hoki mai. Ua tau mai koe I te wākāinga. Ko Mokomoko tērā, I tau mai.
I distinctly remember, and it would have been while we were doing the Naitaho inquiry, him coming back and having described going up to Mount Eden Prison to locate, exhume and take home the bodies of Mokomoko and the other people who they were concerned with. And he made it very clear that as they went into that space, they found Mokomoko almost immediately, because he, in a sense, was calling out to them from the grave. And he was just extraordinarily moved by that experience. And it really gave sort of an essence of culmination of all the effort that had gone into taking him home.
After the exhumation, a large convoy followed the chief back to his lands. Before the sun rose from the east, Chief Mokomoko was finally laid to rest in the Urupa at Waiawa, Ōpōtiki, 1989. With all of its challenges, ultimately the whanau united to bring Mokomoko home. A giant step taken to right the wrongs of the past, a mission complete. However, they did not expect to be fighting for the rights of their kraua and for their people for many years to come.